Hello, thank you for tuning in to MythoPsychoa Episode 1. My name is Rowan Blythe, and my goal for this series is to explore mythology, how it relates to archetypes, and connect it to principles of psychology. I think stories of old are able to teach us a lot about ourselves, often in a spiritual way, but also profoundly psychologically. They can mirror us, our peers, our actions, and we can take from them lessons and tools to gain a deeper understanding of our inner and outer worlds. Now, am I qualified to speak about these things? Maybe not. I got my degree in biology and minored in sociology, but nonetheless, these topics are what have always interested me most, so if you like them too, please be welcome to come along for the ride. This first episode is going to be about the goddess Persephone. She is known as the Greek goddess of spring and queen of the underworld, already a very interesting duality. Her mythos has themes of innocence, abduction, motherly love, the cyclical nature of seasons, and the balance between death and life. Though her story has variations, as do many deities as we've come to know them through antiquity, for the sake of this episode and time, I'll be focusing on perhaps the more common accounts, and I'll be giving a brief overview of her history. So, she is the daughter of Zeus, king of the gods, daughter of Demeter, goddess of agriculture and fertility. Whilst young, Persephone was known as Kore, a name meaning maiden, and maiden referencing a woman that was not married, often virginal. Her mother was extremely protective of her, so Persephone was very sheltered, with a naivete of the ways of the world. Persephone's central myth involves her abduction by Hades, god of the underworld. And again, there are different accounts, but one is that one day, while she was gathering flowers in a meadow, the earth split apart for Hades to emerge on his chariot, where he seized Persephone to drag her down to his realm in the underworld. Now, Hades did have approval for this from Zeus, but it was unbeknownst to Demeter, who was distraught after learning of Persephone's disappearance. She searched the earth far and wide for her daughter. I think the love from a mother is already stronger than most can understand, unless they are a mother themselves, and Demeter's anguish over the loss of her daughter resulted in severe earthly consequences. Through her grief, her duties of agriculture were cast aside. Land became desolate, crops died out, and the world's first winter encroached the earth. Mortal famine began to spread, and the other gods grew concerned. So much so that Zeus had to intervene. He tasked Hermes with a trip of retrieval of the goddess from the underworld. However, Persephone had eaten 6 pomegranate seeds during her time there, and so, according to the rules of the fates, she was bound to return there for part of each year. A compromise to be made, Persephone would spend 6 months of the year with Hades in the underworld and 6 months above ground with Demeter. This cycle fashioned the changing of the seasons. During her half of the year below, the grief of the mother would cause barren winter, and during her return, the spring would bring renewal, growth, fertility to the earth. Circling back to her abduction, Persephone was not a willing bride at the beginning. I mean, obviously, she was taken against her will, right? But she did grow into her role as queen of the underworld, and she ruled alongside Hades, not in subservience, but as an equal, with her throne placed next to his. And in this role, she is revered in a more somber and fearsome context, a pretty stark contrast to her original identity as an innocent maiden of spring. The myth of Persephone is rich with symbolic significance. In regard to nature, divine drama correlates with changing seasons, death and rebirth, winter to spring. Her annual descent to the depths mirrors fallen leaves, shorter days, longer nights, dormancy of life underground until spring blooms again. More broadly, her story offers insight towards the tension carried between life and death, which is often a very thin line. Her story represents both light and darkness, the dual nature that she is venerated for as both goddess of spring, growth, and her title as Queen of the Dead is reflective of the very irrefutable link that both life and death share, both in the cyclical nature we bear witness to, as well as experience as humans and as individuals. So, my mind first thinks of plants and the life cycles thereof. A latent seed is planted, it transforms internally and bursts to newness, life. It has a season of growth, prospers, and it comes to its end in death. Relating to Persephone's mythology in a more human sensibility, we explore the theme of innocence, parental separation, and personal transformation. Her complex growth, change, duality of life and death, role changes, and coming powerfully into her own provide us deep avenues of exploration into our own lives. A little disclaimer, in reality, as a deity, she's far more complex than something as simple as a dual nature can provide justice to her, but for the sake of the episode, this brief history encompasses the themes that I would like to explore archetypically. Of course, Persephone embodies many archetypes. One is maiden before the abduction, representing innocence, youth, potential. Another is queen, an archetype of feminine power and authority. Another is mystic, possessing incredible insight from different worlds, below and above. But the archetype that I'd like to focus on for this episode is that of the transformer. We're all aware that change is a constant of life and death. We bear witness to transformation all around us and within us every day. Seasons come, they go, and with those cycles, so too do we come and go. And by we, I mean as people, others, ourselves, but I also mean as aspects of our individuality that are in perpetual flux. The transformer archetype is one of powerful, changing force. It represents evolution in mythology, history, psychology, and it embodies the process of profound transformation, whether it be personal, social, or cosmic. At its core, it is representative of the cyclical turning of life, death, and rebirth. It recognizes that endings are are necessary for new beginnings, and that destruction is often necessary for creation. The transformer looks beyond what is skin deep to become cognizant of deeper associations, patterns, and potentiality for change. Some key elements from the archetype include the ability to recognize many aspects of a situation, seeing different perspectives, and being able to reframe those aspects. I'm a big believer in interconnectedness. Not much really exists in a solitary bubble. The transformer archetype lends itself to shape-shifting, adaptability, catalyzing evolution. It understands cycles of life, death, rebirth, recognizing that they're all part of the same thing, intrinsically linked. Transformer archetype sheds insight into the ability to deconstruct, reconstruct, and it's also associated with employing neutrality or lack of attachment to outcomes. This last key element is an interesting one archetypically because the Transformer archetype is sort of dispassionate. It lacks warmth that other more nurturing archetypes possess. However, that emotional distance does make way for a clearer vision and radical change when it's necessary. I kind of liken this aspect to radical acceptance or even taking life as it is. The character, Elaine, from my favorite movie, The Love Witch, in one scene she's being told that she takes life as it is, and her response is there any other way to take life? In a more psychological sense, the Transformer archetype relates to characters who endure extensive internal change, or external, or are themselves the catalyst for change in others. And shifting to psychology now, I'd like to connect Persephone's story of transformation to that of the concept of the shadow, that unconscious part of our personality that many try so desperately to keep separate from their ego. Maybe you're currently listening to this at a time of great change in your life, or maybe you're even going through a dark night of the soul. Hopefully not the latter. I hope that you're well, but I do know lately a lot of people have been going through it. During times like these, it's tempting to resist the flow, which can often feel more like a mudslide. Similar to Persephone's initial unwillingness to become who she was destined to be, we're more keen to grasp as hard as we can, perhaps to what positive aspects of ourselves and our lives, within and without, that we can still see, or at least what we perceive as positive. And that positivity, whether it is false or otherwise, can give us a sense of control. Society, we're taught to stifle and stomp down anything negative. And actually our shadow supports us doing this in some ways to keep our mentality protected. But when all is said and done, what's still there? On the outer reaches of our psyche, the dark meeting the light. Shadow is equally as part of us, and accepting that can lead to great revelatory transformation. As our lives change, we have the opportunity to learn many things, but it's important that we reflect. With great change, it's important to integrate lessons learned. But how are you going to get there without reflection? Namely, reflection of those shadow aspects. We see parts of things that we dislike, and our tendency largely is to just ignore them, pretend they don't exist. It seems like everyone is mentioning the shadow of ourselves lately, and I also recognize how important it is, because, again, it is just as much a part of us as the outer light that we give off to the world. A very popular quote from Carl Jung states that, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So how has fate been affecting your life lately? I see this concept as it relates to the mythology of Kore becoming Persephone, and it's such a great visual as well. Our egoic selves being thrust asunder into a deep unconscious that we have to learn to navigate in order to transmutate. When we raise awareness to the shadow, it can be a scary, dark cleft somewhere in the outer realm of our psyche that we don't want to willingly recognize. Certainly it's not a place many are eager to go to, and distractions from it abound. Social media has created, among many things, our own proverbial meadow to pick flowers from, living in naivete and curating our feeds so we can continue milling about mindlessly. And if you're like me, it has been a long time since I've been able to even embrace silence long enough to allow for thought, however it may come. But constant screen time does not help sustain a better mentality. It distracts us from fostering the capability of having one. As we embrace our shadow selves, the parts of us that maybe we don't like, it's important to recognize that duality. The shadow has helped protect us in many ways, so it's important to go through that process with non-judgment. Pulling from the Transformer archetype, a great way to begin tending to conscious growth is through practice of seeing situations from multiple perspectives and embracing change as a natural part of life. Sometimes our perception of qualities as negative can actually become great sources of strength and creativity. When Persephone transformed from Spring Maiden to Queen of the Underworld, imagine how her perspective shifted. It was monumental. Unwilling at first and resistant to change, attachment to a previous self was transformed, and an entirely new cycle of life and seasonality was created. Confronting hidden aspects of ourselves, like the goddess's exploration of self in the underworld, led to profound personal metamorphosis. So if you're going through it, or you're in the process of exploration and integration to your own becoming as a more realized individual, keep going. Thank you for listening to episode 1 of MythoPsychoa. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and if you'd like to join the channel, please be welcome to subscribe. These episodes will be out every other Wednesday.